are we doing what we say we do? I've been to companies here in Dubai where they have never delivered on particular KPIs. They've given up trying in the sense that, well, it doesn't really matter. And for me, this is the beginning of a nasty rot within an organization. The best leaders are those that are able to think ahead about what X, Y, Z might entail and actually come up with a plan that's got some chance of success to support the execution arm. Strategy without execution is just a dream. It's just a hope and a wish. Operations is anything that turns your idea into reality.
Hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of For Those Made to Do. This is a really exciting recording for us because we're changing our format a little bit. So if you can see us right now, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can see that we're in a studio. And if you're just listening in, well, we've moved and now you can actually see us recording our episodes because we kept hearing from people that they wanted a bit more from us. So here we are. So we're super excited to introduce a new topic today. We're going to be talking about operational excellence, and we have an incredible, amazing guest with us who knows everything about it, and he's gonna shed some light on this topic. And we're going to have a really good conversation about it. We're going to let him introduce himself in a second, but just to give you a bit of context as to why we're talking about this, we keep hearing from people in our networks that they are struggling with the work cultures here in the UAE and particularly in Dubai, because it's a place that is transforming so fast. People are in and out, and jobs are changing really fast, and people are moving from one company to another really fast. So it can be a bit difficult to assess and assimilate the work culture you're stepping into. And that work culture is typically dictated by leadership, and leadership leads through operations, and companies function through operations. So today we're kind of breaking that topic down to really understand what role does leadership play in operations, and how can leaders empower their workforce to be more effective and to think differently. And this is where Paul steps in. We know him really well from our day-to-day jobs, from Holt International Business School, which is where Mandy and I work as career advisors and making connections with different companies. And that's where Paul teaches our students to think differently, to innovate, to transform businesses through different business challenges. So Paul, hello. Good morning.
Very nice to be here in the new format.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting.
Yeah, we're happy to do this first version with you.
Thank
you for joining us today. So let's start by talking through your experience of how you became the Wingman executive in the first place. We'd love to hear the journey from the beginning to the end.
Thank you. And I'll try and keep it short because this is a reasonably long journey. But for those that don't know, I started my professional career as a fighter pilot with the Royal Air Force. I spent a little bit of time with the US Marine Corps, but I was trained from the age of 21 to be a British officer, and then very quickly into military fast jet training. This was going to be my life. It's one of those jobs you go into as a childhood passion and go forever. But in 2013, I decided to retire at the end of my commission. And I'd seen some amazing things, done some great stuff. And I saw the future and thought, I know what that looks like. I'd like to do something else with my time and my life now. And so I retired and went into management consulting. In London, in defense consulting, a whole new world. I was 38 years old. I was with peers with late 20s, early 30s, a world where you called your boss by their name rather than sir. A very new environment for me, but also very exciting, and an opportunity to learn how to put a bunch of skills and experiences that I kind of didn't know I had from being a fighter pilot into the business world. We'd never done project management but we had. We'd run major detachments all around the world, but we didn't know it was called project management, and we didn't know that there was a book that had some ways to do it in it. We just kind of did it. And so the management consulting period for me was a period where I started to put the shape or the civilian words, I guess, around a whole bunch of experience I'd had. That very quickly took me to Dubai. I ended up joining Emirates Group. I started on a transformation program for 18 months, delivering a major organizational change, operational role reviews, ways of working, then Vice President Customer Services, then Divisional Vice President Airside Operations for about 5 years, running most of the below wing activity at DXB. About 10,000 people, so it was huge.
Yeah.
And throughout all of that, I had no idea, no technical expertise in those industries or domains at all. And I think when we get later on some of our chats talking about operations and leadership, that's something's really important because these are skills in and of themselves. So I then went into travel and tourism. I did a couple of years there, doing again similar sort of thing: organizational redesign, process mapping, ways of working, business strategy and business execution, while the COO of a major travel group. And then I thought, there's loads of good stuff here. And I wanted to try and do my own thing in my now what is a portfolio career, from fighter pilot to business exec to consultant now, to start my own business. And that's been a huge challenge for me. Very, very different from anything I've ever done before. But, and again, another amazing learning opportunity where I've just picked up a bunch of skills that I'd never had to use before and repurposed some of the skills I had. And Wingman really is about building, helping people think clearer, make decisions better, and lead effectively in almost any situation. And that's what I try and help individuals, companies, teams do, because as I think you said, Bianca, it's a challenging world out there. We've talked about complexity and speed for a long time, and it's only accelerating.
Yeah.
And there's so many challenges that we face in life, but in the business space, that I feel people aren't adequately set up for. We don't provide the right levels of training and support to people to go and cope with this. And I think as a result of that, we see the fact that many people don't cope with it very well.
Yeah, and we'll unpack this a little bit later on in the conversation as well. I think just to get everybody at a level baseline, can we just talk about operations as a whole? Because it's such a broad function, and I think it would be really good to see how you define operations as well.
Yeah, for me, and again, forgive me because what we'll hear is a lot of concept stuff, but what's a famous saying, strategy without execution is just a dream. It's just a hope and a wish. Operations is anything that turns your idea into reality. It's as simple as that. Things are incredibly easy to say. They are very difficult to do. And we consistently say we'll get X, Y, and Z done. And then where does all the problems start? When we come to try and execute what X, Y, and Z is. And to kind of bridge the divide between leadership and operations, the best leaders are those that are able to think ahead about what X, Y, Z might entail and actually come up with a plan that's got some chance of success to support the execution arm. And the best executors are those that are able to move through the inevitable roadblocks, issues that happen whenever you do anything to make reality real, to manifest this desire, this idea, this dream that a leader, that a visionary had.
For someone sitting in an operational role right now, what does that mean to you, and what advice could you give them to kind of elevate where they're at right now?
I think the first thing for people to do is to reflect, are we doing what we say we do? This has been the biggest shock coming out of the military, where, and to draw that back, is that I was trained where these operations mattered. Do you know what I mean? This was important stuff. We had to do what we said we did. And we had a group of people that were actively trying to stop us doing the thing that we said we did. Not bad luck, not a bit of weather or the traffic lights are red and I couldn't get there on time. The people were actually out there and their whole day job was trying to stop us. So the first thing I'd ask people to reflect on is that, are we doing what we said we did? If we've got these targets, if we've got a thing to go and do, how effectively are we doing it? I've been to companies here in Dubai where they have never delivered on particular KPIs. Never. And they've given up trying, in the sense that, well, it doesn't really matter. And for me, this is the beginning of a nasty rot within an organization, in the sense that if we're not doing what we say we do, then our benchmarks are wrong, our planning's wrong. We don't know if we're good or bad, or a little bit better or a little bit worse. We've got no way of then doing continual improvement, which is another feature of operational excellence. We're in the wilderness. And so if you're in an ops job today, I think the thing to do is sit there and go, are we delivering what we say we're delivering? Yes or no? If we're not, what do we need to change to make it real? It might be the thing we say we're delivering. Maybe we can't deliver that and we need to be honest about that. Or it might be we need to change our processes to make sure we actually deliver it. If we don't have that baseline from an operations perspective, we're lost.
And can we talk a bit about how companies set those KPIs, the key performance indicators, right? Those targets, who sets them? How do they set them? Do they set the right or wrong ones if they never really achieve them?
It's a great question. They can be very frustrating. The challenge you have is that KPIs are an incentive mechanism.
Yeah.
So there's two sides to this coin. You can't improve what you can't measure.
Yeah.
And what gets measured is what gets done. So if you tell people we're going to measure your number of steps per day, then they'll do the number of steps per day because that becomes your performance management, all sorts of other things go on. So you end up trapped in what's called incentive mechanisms, and they're really, really difficult because humans are exceptionally clever. And I think to jump to the end of this kind of question about KPIs is that leaders and people setting KPIs and managers and team leaders setting KPIs, we need to realize that whatever we set, the human beings that have to deliver them are very, very clever. And they will find ways of ticking those boxes, because that's inevitably what they come, in order to do what they think is best. And we see the anecdotal stories from the British in India where there was we didn't like snakes, so we gave a bounty for snakes, and then the snake farms popped up because that's how you got more snakes to get the bounty. Now, almost certainly apocryphal, almost certainly not true, but it kind of is a visual reference to the fact that humans are very good at managing incentives for their own personal needs, not necessarily the business. So out of that, you then see balanced scorecards where we try and play incentives off against each other. We want you to be 100% safe. Okay, great. So we do everything really, really slowly. We put 20 people to look at things. Oh, no, we need you to also have a bit of cost in there. Start to balance these KPIs out. So really, really powerful because they drive people's focus and attention. Really, really difficult to get right because they drive people's focus and attention, and they will then work out ways to optimize for themselves, not you, in most cases. So we need to treat them very carefully, and we need to understand the second and third order impacts of setting up KPIs.
And say if you're in a team environment where you've been set some KPIs, and like you mentioned, they're not the right set of KPIs for the deliverables that you're doing, how do you then feed that upwards? Because you're in the thick of it, right? You're doing the operations. So.
Yeah, gently, I think, is the simplest answer to this. I mean, we've got to remember that in the vast majority of business, there is a hierarchy, and passing information up is challenging. As always, and this is going to be another feature of operations with data. One of the reasons I've been hired into roles, I've been moved into roles, I've been asked for advice, I've been consulted, is because we have to make decisions based on data. And so often we don't. You'd be surprised how often we don't really use data to make decisions. That comes from a tendency to promote individual contributors, people that are very good at their role, who just know answers intuitively, which is an awful lot cheaper in the short term than, getting a data system. But in the long term provides no corporate knowledge about how things work. So, but yeah, getting data, understanding. I think of them as levers. As I said before, we're trying to achieve something. What are the levers that we can pull to make it work? I mean, what do I need to? We need to move faster. Okay, what are the levers I can pull to make things faster? We need to make it more consistent. Okay, what are the levers I can pull to make it more consistent? Understanding what those are and showing upwards that, hey, look, if we were to measure A, B, and C rather than D, E, and F, we would be able to see those levers, and then we'd know how far to pull them. I always challenge my teams to go, can we make a process 15, 20% worse? As almost a sort of thought experiment, because what I'm asking for here is how much control do we have over our process? If we try to make it better every day, then surely if we have those ability to pull those levers and make things happen out the end of the machine, the process, then surely we can pull levers and make it 20% worse.
Sure.
And it blows people's minds because we actually don't have any of the levers. We don't have any of the control in many, many circumstances. And so when we talk about that process and those KPIs, I think it's really important to understand how do we control levers to change the outcome at the end of the machine, at the end of the process.
And I really want to dive into a follow-up there, because on one side you have, when you're looking at a business and performance and KPIs, you have the data and the facts and the decisions. Then on the other side, you have the people, the motivations, the humanity. How do you then measure motivation beyond KPIs, beyond ticking boxes, to make sure that people are truly engaged and they're not just creating a snake farm to get more snakes out there and to get brownie points at work?
It's a super deep question. And for another podcast where we kind of reflect on the nature of leadership development and how we do it, because leadership in itself is unmeasurable. And when we look to measure employee engagement, it doesn't seem to have any correlation with business performance. Plenty of companies with very high employee engagement scores, and you go, okay, cool, so you must be rocking it in your business metrics, and there's very little correlation there. The way to measure anything in a business, unfortunately, is in business results.
Yeah.
And the soft side of leadership development, that is a very admirable reaction to the hard side of command, control, beast, exploit, misses that point as well, which is that we actually have a job to do. And so the way you'll see if your team is engaged is that problems on the ground, the bad luck that tends to affect most businesses, this difficulty between what you want to do, what you plan to do, what you actually do, and the results, as Stephen Bungay calls it, the three gaps between plans, actions, and results. What you see is your humans will fill those gaps for you inherently if you're doing it well. And that's when you start getting exponential performance in your business results, because your humans are filling in the gaps that even the best made processes are going to have, because real life happens. Not, as I remember, as a result of an active, engaged enemy trying to ruin your day. Although if you're in high-end businesses with a competitive environment, yes. When a competitor is going to suddenly change the market suddenly on you, or put in drop a price on you, and you have to respond to that. But just day to day, anything with humans has got friction, and your people will fill in those gaps. So the KPIs, again, move further and further away in importance. They are how you measure your business success at the highest level. They don't help you with how well that process was designed and how well the people inside that process are able to execute it in the best case, and then, more importantly, flex that process in anything other than the perfect case.
Perfect.
And that's the truth, is that we build processes assuming a whole bunch of business management friendly assumptions.
Yeah,
exactly.
And do you know what I mean? Everyone comes in when they want us to come in. Nothing bad ever happens. And often this is done by a third party, business support departments. I love them, and they're a curse because they have no operational accountability. They'll come in and they'll sit there and they'll go, right, you should be able to do this podcast at exactly this amount of time, all things, that's the time. And it's all based off best case. And then there's a bit of traffic, there's power outage, it takes time to set up the equipment. And these are all normal bits of friction that mean that what we've written down can't actually be achieved by the human beings that have to do it.
Yeah.
And what's more, if you go and ask them, they know this.
Yeah, that's the thing. We also work in a very operational driven environment. And I think exactly how you've described is exactly what we do, because we are essentially the operational team on the ground delivering. So what in theory is a really, really great idea, how it actually gets executed completely different. And then the outcome is completely different to that. So I think it's really interesting to hear that, because I'm really connecting with it right now. So I'm like, this is our day today.
But we work with people, and you do too, right?
Yeah.
You're a professor, we're career coaching. Our customers are humans, and every advice we give them is very personalized, very tailored to them. So there's what we tell them, there's what they hear, there's what they do with it. So between the thought, the action, the result, there are quite a few different gaps. And those gaps just mean that the journey isn't linear. Everybody kind of goes on their own, and then eventually they come back and they go, I got an internship in Singapore, which is what we heard yesterday. We're like, okay, well, we gave you some advice. We weren't thinking Singapore, you were, and you made it happen, and it's amazing. So,
well, that's beautiful, because what you've got into there almost is the crux of innovation within business, is that we set, I get frustrated, we set up innovation teams, and really your innovation is going to come from your people on the front line. They're actually innovating every day, either for good or for ill. If they don't like you, if they don't like what they're doing, they'll innovate ways to hide from it, to find shortcuts, to get around it. If they're kind of neutral, they'll innovate ways to make your process that probably doesn't work in real life. And that's what often catches people out, because you normalize this, where we don't do what we're supposed to do because it doesn't work. And there's so many times in operations I've heard that, so many, where, well, we just don't do it that way. It doesn't work. Well, why have we written that that's the way we do it? Oh, I don't know, years ago, don't know. Doesn't work that way. We don't do it that way. Yeah. And now, now as a boss, as a leader, I've lost control again. Because I don't know what we're supposed to be doing. What does good look like? What is the right way? What safety shortcuts are they taking? What process shortcuts are they taking? They're looking at it from their lens, their perspective. Maybe there was a really good reason why it had to be done another way, for a regulation, for compliance, for safety. But they don't see that. They don't know. They're not misintentioned, but they know that what I've told them to do doesn't work for them. So this, going back to that ops role function, it's really understanding all of these things and then making sure that the team that are doing the job know the bigger picture about why they're doing it, because only then can they start to then improvise, innovate. And if you use those two words interchangeably, then you get a much better understanding of how innovation happens in companies. Innovate to align the process for you. Then all you need is just a feedback loop for them to go, hey, look, when it gets really busy, we don't do A, B, C, D, and E. We've been doing F and G because it works really well. And you go, that's great. We're going to now codify that. And I guess this is where bigger businesses get stuck, is that people go, oh, if you have to write all of this stuff down, you're ever writing documents and changing documents. And I always reject that, because in Top Gun, there's 14 manuals, admittedly quite big, this big off the floor, that teach you how to fly and fight the F-18 against the percentage enemy threat. So that's quite a lot of manuals, but it's probably quite a complex domain. So if they can do it, if they can write a book, doctrine, manuals that tell you how to do that, then almost any company can write down how to do their job in a way that is interpreted and authoritative and useful for the people doing their job.
Just going back to this concept of feedback loops, and I'm just trying to think, like, regionally, when we look at operational roles and the hierarchy of the people within them, how would you encourage people, maybe in a middle management setup, to ensure that there's a safe feedback loop and it's open, and it's also then reaching the ears that need to hear the feedback on the innovation and the improvisation and things like that?
Well, I mean, this, from my side, my brain goes immediately, this is really easy. And then I realized it isn't. I mean, the military, we had this, every single mission we carried out as fighter pilots, we had a no rank debrief at the end of it. We would sit down, no rank, because it doesn't matter. Yeah. We were trying to find out what happened. In Just Culture, there's a concept of a no blame fact-finding investigation. That's really what you want to do. Now, I will say straight away that I have never run a debrief in my just over a decade in corporate. It doesn't work in the business battle rhythm, in the tempo that we do business. What we need to be doing periodically is going in and looking at our operation, especially if we're not doing the thing we say we do every day, and asking why. In a no rank, what's actually happening under the hood. The default position, unfortunately, is to move blame down. Yeah. We tend to blame the people for not doing the process rather than working out whether we have made a process that's doable. But in this middle management role, it's just getting in there and genuinely going through the why are we not doing what we're doing? What are the reasons behind it? Talking to the people that do the job. To understand why they do what they do. And if they say they don't do a process, not to then give them a disciplinary because you've told them to do the process, is to understand why. Again, for your listeners, one of the great investigation techniques is called the 5 whys.
Yeah,
I
so basic but effective.
The toddler approach. Just keep asking why. Absolutely. Just keep asking why until they look. And it's a really powerful tool. And we almost certainly at the end of that, for the vast majority of these, get to some kind of systemic issue, that the assumptions we built the process on aren't true. The stakeholder who was supposed to deliver X, Y, and Z doesn't, or does it variably, or doesn't do it in the way we want to do it. The time we've given to do the job is insufficient in any real world situation. We haven't appropriately trained the people that are doing the job, so they don't actually have the skills and experience to do what we want them to do. One of the other big pet peeves of mine is managers, quite experienced managers, talking about junior people in the teams as if they had all of their skills and experience. And like, cool, so you're going to spend for a bunch of manager grade to go and do this job because they all think like you do? No. because you can't afford that. So if you wanted a bunch of really, really clever people doing all these jobs, then you're going to pay them those really big salaries that clever people get, yeah? No, you're paying clever people that don't have the skills and experience yet at a rate that mirrors their contribution. And if you think they're doing stuff that's bad, well, then your job's to educate them. Your process needs to work for the people that are going to deliver the process. Back to this. Yeah. It's you can't break the two things apart. The process that you've designed and the people that are going to deliver it have to be built in absolute synergy. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, again, you're just wishing again. You're hoping that it's going to work.
I think from my experience, one of the main reasons why strategy or KPIs don't get met by the team is that managers withhold information that is critical for the teams to know to be able to succeed. And that links a little bit with what you just said. When you have expectations of someone who is maybe 2-3 grades below you, who's had a lot less experience and a lot less exposure, they haven't been in the same rooms where you have been. They don't understand, they don't fully understand the context. And I think a lot of the time people do in organizations, especially in large ones, they don't understand the why.
Let's not talk about the do they even know. Let's talk about it's not talk about it's old and outdated, because they're probably beyond our reader. Yeah. But there's a fantastic concept from the military. We have the whole way in which the military does leadership and operations is through this principle called mission command. And I'm not going to go into it too much today, but one of the first principles of mission command is commander's intent. Again, Stephen Bungay covers this brilliantly in his book. Mm-hmm. But commander's intent is essentially what we're trying to achieve and why, and the context within which it sits. And without going into that too much, the most important thing about commander's intent is how it's communicated. And we have this principle called 2 up and 2 down. What that means is that you should be aware not just of what your boss wants and what he's trying to achieve, but what his boss wants and what she's trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. Because then, and again, why is this important and why isn't it done in business? Here we go, because always ask why. The toddler question is the most important one. And because people will have read this, why is it not done in business? It's not done in business because you only do this if you want your people to think.
Interesting.
Okay, the reason I need to know what my boss wants and what his boss wants is so that I can ensure that my actions that are my own creation are aligned with not just my 1 up, but my 2 up. But if I'm not required to have any independent input on the business, this becomes irrelevant. And that's why it's not taught. The reason it's so important in the military is the expectation. Okay, and we'll come to that later on if we get time. The expectation that I'm going to have independent actions, my own thoughts to do something which isn't written on a process tick list. And therefore, to do that in cohesion with the business, I do it knowing both. If you now think of broader structures, 1 boss, 3 direct reports, people working below them, everyone, no matter which silo they're in, knows what their boss's boss, the singular, is looking for. So I don't do things over in silo 1 that I know would be against the intent of my boss's boss, and therefore you remove a vast chunk of the interdepartmental issues that you have in businesses by communicating intent 2 ranks up, 2 ranks down. But it's, of course, predicated on the fact that people are going to be taking independent actions. So to your point, yes, we need to know the why. And if you're sitting there in an operations management role right now and you don't know why we demand everybody does the thing that we demand everybody does, you don't know why we've got people standing in a line before they go into the room, we don't know why we're providing this level of service to the customer and not another level. And this is a big question I used to ask as a manager. Remember I said at the beginning I didn't know anything about the industries. So people come and say to me, and I use this example a lot, Paul, what should we price this transfer at? I don't know. Literally no idea. What did you do last time? Well, 52. Okay, why 52, not 53 or 51? And everyone goes blank.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because we're just parroting. So those things to ask is, well, if we don't know that, then I think that's step 1 for you as the management role, is to try and understand why we're doing what we're doing. If you're in the business, then ask why. And not in the petulant toddler way necessarily, but in a diplomatic way. Try and explain what are we trying to achieve here? Because so often, and this is the real power of empowerment, which is, again, another podcast, is that as a boss, as an executive, there's a bunch of things I want. I am not smart enough to work out the perfect way of delivering those. But if I tell you guys what it is I want, and you're all living in the trenches every day doing this, you are infinitely capable of going, well, Paul wants this. This would do this for him. Now I have to manage that might have been an unsafe way or an unregulated way or a non-compliant way. But nonetheless, I'm now getting those ideas coming out from the people that know, because I've given intent, the why about what I'm trying to achieve.
Because you kind of see this a little bit more in startup environments, because obviously the proximity to someone who's 2 levels above you is closer than it would be in a very large kind of matrix organisation, like a big corporation.
Yeah.
I think that's where, I guess, innovation happens a little bit more easily, I think.
Yeah, and intent is clear. So a couple of things come together in a startup. You start off as your 4 or 5 person team.
That's it.
Everyone's got the shared vision. Everyone understands what we're trying to achieve. Everyone's acting independently with cohesion. Then you start to scale. Now you're communicating what you want, and people, unfortunately, because it's the only way we seem to know how to lead within business, is that we go, okay, well, we can't let them do any thinking, so let's drive them into this box here. 2 up, 2 down becomes irrelevant. People have just got a job to do. And then we sit back and complain, why aren't they thinking? Why aren't they proactive? Why didn't they just do that? Well, it's because they didn't know the intent. And even if it was obvious, they've almost got 0 incentive, and in many cases, negative incentive to do that thing. Which is, again, probably another point. I was with somebody the other day, and we were walking past a hotel, and beautiful, as it's Dubai, beautiful 5-star hotel, and there's the very well-dressed valet crew out the front. And in the street in front of them, there was one of the irrigation pipes that does all the flower beds that had stuck out and was spraying water everywhere. And somebody said to me, is that, look at them all stood there, why don't they come across and fix that? It's just lazy. I'm not sure it is lazy. I'm sure that they've got negative incentive not to be stood out at the front of that hotel to go and fix a problem that's not in their jurisdiction. And while in my old life in the military, of course, the head of that valet team would have assigned 2 people. You over there, go and talk to maintenance, or go over there and fix it yourself, get it done, because we know that doesn't give a good impression to the overall hotel. Doing that management level thinking. That water pipe out the front, Dubai municipality, got nothing to do with our hotel, but clearly we're a big 5-star. It looks, we should get it fixed. Yeah. We know that's the answer, but none of the incentive mechanisms.
What would be a negative incentive?
You're not where you're supposed to be, and therefore you get in trouble. You didn't do the thing I asked you. I've written you a checklist, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. If the gap between 3 and 4 would mean it would be better if I did something else, then and something goes wrong, then I didn't follow the checklist. Disciplinary, first warning, second warning, third warning, out. And that's the problem is that the big difference between, again, back to this concept of independent action, and we've drifted a little bit, but it is relevant to empowerment. So a lot of managers that are well-intentioned talk about empowering their teams. And that's an okay first step. But I talked about this at the beginning, this leadership isn't soft. What you need to do is demand that they use the empowerment. It is not a gift, it's a responsibility. And in the military structure that I grew up in is that somebody who acted and got a bad result would be treated significantly more favorably than somebody that failed to act.
Interesting.
We required, we demanded that officers, managers, people in charge of other people acted.
So there's some safety there as well then, if you instinctually acted, that there's not going to be repercussions that mean that you're
assuming you act within well-intentions, within the scope of your training, within the line of the mission. Do you know what I mean? We're not saying just do what you want and that's good. But again, when we know that even if you act well-intentioned in the scope of the mission with all your knowledge and skills, things still don't go right. But that's what's required. So in that context in front of the hotel, for the military perspective, the head of that valet team, I would have expected him to have done something to fix it. And the excuse of, well, not my job, wouldn't have mattered. It's almost backwards. And ironically, not by desire from senior management, but by the systems they've put in place to manage their people. It prevents execution.
And then there's, sorry to interrupt you, then there's the other side where people talk about promotions and what it takes to get a promotion. And a lot of the time, the way managers view promotions is, well, if this person does their job and goes above and wants to take on more and has that initiative and drive and etc., just what you were talking about, acts, then they deserve the promotion. But lately we're starting to see, especially after COVID, the quiet quitting, and we're starting to see people just kind of like staying low because they're realizing that if they do take on more work at times, the rewards isn't comparable to the extra effort and stress and responsibility they would be carrying. So organizations also need to evolve past that, and maybe there needs to be a new way of thinking around how do we reward the action takers, the risk takers, the innovators, the people who come forward.
Yeah, and a big transformational topic, which I would love to get into. I'm going to try and avoid talking about too much. I mean, yeah absolutely. I mean, it's just quiet quitting. I don't like the phrase because it's been designed to put the onus on the employee, and I never do that. It's all systemic. It's all management failures. Every single failure within an organization comes from management. Even when you get sabotage and fraud, which is the far end of your disciplinary spectrum, because, well, you hired them and people don't like it. When I was 21, I was put in charge of men and women much more experienced and much more competent than I was. But I was the leader. That was my job, my function. And I was told that if somebody doesn't do what you've asked them to do, it's because you gave a bad order. And
that's a lot of pressure.
I did, absolutely. and I usually say this for a few months into my leadership roles because people don't like it. And people will kind of nod because I'm the boss. And then you'll watch several days and weeks and months after that, you'll get no, it's not true. This person's just rubbish, Paul. And yeah, maybe, but you hired them. You trained them. You gave them a job to do that they can't do. Ultimately, the accountability lies with you, doesn't it? And so to this point around what to do to get promoted, look, because that's probably more useful for people listening, I guess, is that it's adding value. I mean, if you're in an organization where your options are quiet quit, then there's a different conversation. And we've got bigger systemic problems. And I believe there is huge systemic problems. I just don't think we're leading very well. And that we're kind of getting away with it. But I think the generations coming through are having less and less tolerance for it.
Absolutely.
Correct.
But that's, again, could we do that with podcast as well?
That one's three episodes.
but if you're in a role today and you're in an operations role today, how do you add value? I think being curious, adding value by being curious, understanding how the processes that you're operating add value to the business, understanding how you can be in a world where most days you come into work having done the thing that you said you would do. That's the journey you want to get to. Manager burnout is usually as a result of every day you come into work fixing what didn't happen yesterday. It blows my mind when I came in from the military is that everyone's day job was, we had all of these issues yesterday that we need to fix. Investigations, process rewrites, whatever it was. All of it was retroactive. None of it was, well, why don't we do some work up front to make the process robust? So here's a good operations tip for people. Effective before efficient. And businesses mess this up a lot because they want efficiencies. And I agree. Bottom line, business results are the only results that matter. But if you try and build a process that's efficient and effective, it's probably not going to be very robust. It's probably going to have holes in it. It will probably fail quite a lot. You'll spend all of your spare management capacity fixing those failures day to day because they'll be random, because that's the nature of these failures. When you're too efficient, you won't have any patterns to understand. And you'll just stay in this status quo like most businesses are of, it didn't work yesterday. What can we fix tomorrow? Usually pointing at the people to be better. If you build a nice, robust process that works, probably a little fat, probably a little bit inefficient, but it works, now your days are, it works. Now you can spend each day going, how do I lean this process? How do I go through my Lean Six Sigma processes? How do I go through my 7 wastes? How do I go from something that works but is a little wasteful, but I don't have to come into work every day fixing it, and then go, where can I surgically tweak it down? And now when I make those changes and I break it, I know which change broke it, I can fix it. And that, from an operational excellence and from a continuous improvement process, that's where you want to get to.
What's the appetite for that then from those sitting in the finance team, for example, those sitting at the top where they're looking for more efficiency, they're looking for more cost saving, they're looking for more profit? Then that doesn't, they don't They don't go hand in hand, do they?
No, but we also...
How do we generate that appetite?
Yeah, so if you're a senior middle manager, then they don't know what's going on for a start. I mean, let's talk directly to those people. Is if you're a senior middle manager, then nobody knows what's going on in your business, certainly anyone from finance or accounting or anything else, is that if you're spending your days fixing processes that didn't work, if you're constantly not hitting your KPIs or your OCRs, then the first thing you want to do is make some changes within what's within your gift to make a process robust. Take some risk, move some people around, make it work. Once it works, all of that work you were doing to fix it disappears. You've now got some free time. Now use that free time to make the business better. And that on the micro is essentially effective leadership and management. Is stop fixing yesterday, being reactive, looking backwards. Give yourself some headroom by making an operation that's robust and works. And then from there, now I've got time for innovation. Now I've got time to think. Now I'm not doing 14-hour days answering the phone call every day. So yeah, my honest answer to people is that no one knows what's going on. Hide it. I mean, who's going to check?
Yeah. And then you've also got something demonstrable that you can feed upwards to be like, okay, I did this kind of rogue plan.
Well, you don't need to say it. Again, people don't need to know. Again, a little bit like conspiracy theories is that if businesses were as competent as we think in terms of knowing what's going on, then they'd all be excellent, and we wouldn't be having these podcasts. We know when not that competent. We know that people don't know what's going on 2 or 3 roles down. So if you're in that position, and again, let's talk about the people. We don't want to be working 12, 14-hour days, 6 days a week when you're getting paid for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, okay, bringing in some other concepts here.
No, but then I also think because there's a lot of chatter at the moment around like Gen Z not wanting to take management roles. They don't see, it's not in their interest. They, exactly to what we're speaking to, that the input doesn't outweighs the output. They're not getting paid for their time, what they're investing. So there's a bit of an adverse reaction to being in this position in the first place. So I think this advice maybe will speak to a generation of incoming talent who are thinking that's not for me because actually I've got no control over the impact that I'm making isn't going to be seen. The amount of hours I have to put in doesn't outweigh the output. So it's kind of like speaking to this kind of incoming workforce that we're dealing with at the moment.
And I hope it changes, and it is a hope because I have limited ability to influence it. I try with Wingman, and this is what a lot of my book's going to talk about, is the fact that we know how to do leadership and management well. We just don't do it. I don't believe we believe it's possible. And we've been indoctrinated into these industrial revolution models. I mean, even the 8 hours a day is a hold on from the 19th century.
Yeah.
This is not how we do. And when we'll probably move on to this later on, but as AI comes in, we start to see the fact that knowledge is going to become less and less important. So getting creativity, getting independent action, getting responsiveness out of our human beings has become more and more important. And frankly, an awful lot of managers and leaders just haven't been given that training. And again, I very rarely blame individuals. The problems we have is that we haven't done meaningful leadership training so that we know how to effectively manage people. And all we've done is this very, very poor proxy of turn people into machines and write process documents that don't even work in a manufacturing plant, but certainly don't work with the frictions of human beings.
Yeah. And let's dive a bit deeper into the tech revolution that's coming in, because it's unprecedented and it's changing a lot of things. And as you were saying, knowledge is more freely available now than ever before. At the same time, what we consider to be knowledge is now filtered through the lens of ChatGPT and other generative AI kind of tools. So how is artificial intelligence in particular, just to zoom in on that, how is this changing, in your opinion, the world of operations? Because we talked a lot about data, right?
Yeah. So when it first dropped, nearly 2 years ago now, a little bit less than that, but November 23, I think. But it was amazing, and immediately integrated it straight into my operation there and then. I mean, you could already see that everything changed. I remember saying in the very early days, even if this is it, even if ChatGPT 3 is all we ever get, this changes everything.
Yeah.
Straight away, we were able to create consistent voice copy for marketing campaigns and then translate it into 5 languages rather than have somebody do that over a period of months badly, honestly, because tone of voice consistency is really hard to do. We were immediately able to start creating documentation. It was a relatively immature business I was working with at the time. In terms of documentation, this SOPs, this process, this doctrine I talked about, my 14 top manuals, we were very suddenly able to give people the tools to go, I think all of this should be happening. Can you structure it for me?
Yeah.
Very quickly, we started to get structured documentation, version 1s. Great, let's publish version 1. Let's get feedback. Let's tweak it over time. Now tweaking it over time wasn't so onerous. You know what I mean? So all of the things that and again, we weren't investing in as a business, and there you go, it comes back to the problem. It's never the people's fault. We weren't investing in teams to produce SOPs doctrine. Now we were able to create these much, much quicker. So what we're seeing, I think, at the beginning under those teams that are using AI well, is we're actually filling in the gap of lack of investment in what good business looks like, because it's so easy. We're creating content, that's that kind of documentation content. We can fill in that gap if we're creating. Now, really, the answer always should have been we should have invested in that properly in the first place. So we're going to fill that gap. I think what you're going to see, of course, is over time that trend is going to reverse, and then people are going to go, no, we're going to cut back again. We want fewer people and more of the LLM stuff coming in, and I think that's inevitable. You're going to see some element of that. I think the challenge I'm wrestling with, I don't have the answer to, is how does my 14, nearly 15-year-old daughter get to 40?
Yeah.
Because I treat my large language model in my pocket, in my phone, as a 40-year-old domain expert in almost anything. Now, there's some challenges, and I have to reflect on the fact that I'm nearly 50 and I've built up a whole load of world experience, and I know a whole bunch of things exist, and I can ask about them, and I know what good looks like in a whole bunch of domains, that professional mastery, which means I'm quite good at managing what the LMM can do. And what you'll find is that, look, I'm not going to work on this flight. I couldn't care less. I'll get the economy. Or actually, I am going to do some work, and it's 3 hours, and I'm good at it, and business back to back, and my life, I want the business. And people will actually make pretty good decisions. And then what you do is you educate around those decisions, and you go, hey, Paul, you took that business class flight for an 1.5-hour trip. Come on. And okay, sorry, I didn't interpret it very well. And we learn rather than punish. Yeah. This, again, nuanced topic, but of fundamental importance if you want to get operational excellence, is that we can't have our team fighting against us.
You mentioned something about context. Yeah. And I think when we think about the incoming generations, I think this is a critical thing that they need, that they don't have, because they have access to so much information. Yeah. They take it on face value. You mentioned curiosity earlier as well. I think these are things that we do need to nurture in the kind of incoming talent that's coming into the workforce. And from your perspective, with someone who's had so much oversight in different operational environments, how would you encourage someone who's looking to enter into operations as a career path to nurture these skill sets? What's your advice for them, if you could speak to them directly? I
think that previously we'd have said technical expertise. Do we know your field, be an expert at it, so on and so forth. And look, that's necessary, but it's not sufficient. I think the trick is professional mastery, broadening out your skill sets, understanding what other things. This is where innovation comes from, taking two ideas that shouldn't exist and smashing them together. I think if you're in the industry, understanding how professional excellence developed all the way from Toyota, all the way through Kaizen principles, understanding what this whole domain looks like in a little bit more detail. Not being focused on the fact that you know how your business works in your time, in your country, in your division, in your branch, because that knowledge is probably not relevant. Well, today isn't relevant as you get promoted, and in the future might not be relevant at all. So trying to find ways of moving away from technical knowledge, individual technical knowledge as being your USP. So that is moving into understanding what management and leadership looks like, understanding how you communicate, motivate with individuals, how you build relationships more broadly, understanding how we innovate and iterate in businesses. There's some great books that I think understand how we do things differently. FIRE, for example, Fast, Inexpensive, Restrained, Elegant. Wonderful book about how NASA did 10 very, very cheap programs, but moved much quicker, so much more agility. It's tough. You've got to learn your trade initially, and that's where we are. But I think as we move to the future, we're going to have a broader set of skills that cover the humanities, that cover relationship management, that cover operational excellence, process optimization. That essentially this, what they call it, T-shaped. This professional mastery. This is the currency of quality leaders. Is people that understand professionalism, not necessarily a specific technical domain. And once you start to learn about that domain, you can apply it all over the place. You can see that the processes start to look wrong, ways that teams work just don't feel professional. So seeing how Formula One teams operate, seeing how sports teams operate, seeing how high-end military teams have operated, where you've seen professionalism be the hallmark of success because it was required by the domain in the past. I think regular business is going to need to get closer to that because AI is going to take out the normal, the banal, the basic knowledge. We're going to have it on tap, I believe, soon. And so the only way we're going to add value is by moving closer to what we today consider to be elite teams.
Okay. So to observe, to be curious, to investigate, and just really, observe what these teams are doing. Because if someone hasn't, say if they're very early on, they've just graduated and they're like, right, I want to work for Emirates in an operational role. It seems very exciting. I love the aviation industry. And sometimes, a lot of the times, that is the basis of their decision making, right? It's just like, it seems appealing. It looks exciting. So then in that instance, then the advice would be to go read, go explore,
do that job. And then, but don't just do that job. And with a little bit of time we've got left, one of our other professors at Holt told me this amazing story the other day that one of the Formula One teams doing their pit stop, they brought in the London Ballet School. Because they'd done the process inside out. What they hadn't done was the people and the way the people move. And the reason I tell that story, and I'd love to tell it in more detail, is that this is what we're going to need to do as human beings to be value add in the future, is to think like that.
To dance together.
Because I'm pretty sure I can put the video in and ChatGPT will give me the which a process optimizer could give me. And we could look here and we'll do that. The thing that humans are going to do is go, but there's this whole other domain over here, which does exactly what I'm trying to do that no one's ever, and I'm going to bring that in. And that's the creativity and imagination that I've seen in combat. That's the creativity and imagination you see in world-class organizations. I think if we're going to be adding value as human beings in the workplace over the next 10, 20 years, we need to be doing more of that.
Yeah. I feel like in the past, we've focused so much on knowledge and we've built this knowledge economy. And now I'm seeing companies moving towards the creative economy, the creativity and the critical thinking behind. And it's exactly what you're saying, because we don't need to strive for knowledge anymore. We have it. We've produced it. We've created so much data. We've captured the data. Now we've built AI, which is able to break it down, analyze it, and quantum computing is coming in and it's going to supercharge the way in which we capture and process data. Knowledge will never be an issue anymore. What to do with the knowledge, where to apply it, and how to combine different parts, where to pull it from, I think is the human attribute that will stay and will thrive in the future. And this is where you have people that go beyond tech. We're going to need philosophers and sociologists and artists and creatives to come and infuse business with this new lens of limitless possibility. Let's just innovate and let's just do things bigger and better than ever before.
I love it. I give us 3 C's: context, creativity, and critical thinking. That's what we are going to be going forward. We should be that today, to be fair. That's what makes exceptionally good leaders and managers today. But that is going to be your entry-level requirement.
So it used to take experience, right? It used to take like 20, 30, 40 years in business to get to that level. But now, as a junior person, you can pull all of that knowledge and you can start refining your skills in that sense, and you can achieve that status a lot quicker.
Yes.
That's the opportunity, I guess.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Paul. I think you've given us so much to think about, and some really concise tools as well, which I think people can leverage in their roles, which I think is fantastic. I'd love to give you an opportunity to promote anything that you're working on right now before we close off the conversation.
That's really kind of you. Thank you. My focus at the moment is very much writing my book. I am talking about a lot of the things we talk about today and why we struggle to lead in ways that I think are more effective and have proven to be more effective. But also just great to engage with me on LinkedIn, on Instagram. I'm starting to build some courses. We were chatting at the very beginning here, starting to build some courses that talk about some of these things in kind of bite-sized ways to help leaders and managers be more effective. So yeah, engage with Wingman Executive. Come and say hello, and that'd be great. Thank you.
Amazing. And don't forget to engage with us too.
Of course.
For those Made to Do Pod on YouTube and all the other channels that podcasts are hosted on, especially Spotify and Podio, Apple Podcasts, all of that good stuff. And follow our Instagram page as well, because we're doing a lot of recaps and updates, and you can listen to all our previous episodes that have come before as well. So thank you for listening.
All right. See you next time.
Bye.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.